who are very, very, very low body weight, I see it. It's not something I never see. I
I
see
see
it.
it. I see it pretty often from people who have come from other plans. I see it. To me, it's very
Yeah.
common. I see it probably at least once a week.
Yeah.
Okay, and then someone asked a question, how come women's infertility is so much more spoken about than male infertility?
It's, to be honest, it's wrong. It's like it's not right. I mean, we think of fertility as a women's issue, and we think of, I'm trained as an OBGYN, right? So it's not just us. It's like the world thinks of women as fertility as a women's health issue because women get pregnant and women are the ones who carry pregnancy and deliver the baby. But when you look at these, like when I study for my boards, right, they show these graphs of causes of infertility, and it's like a circle, and a third of it is female infertility, a third of it is male infertility, and a third of it is both. So it's just as common, um, and it's not often spoke about. And the truth is, we think about it in terms of, sometimes it's like the male ego, we're protecting the male ego and all of these things that people talk about. It's not good. When I see couples who are experiencing fertility and the cause of it is male infertility, I mean, the men have struggled with this because no one's talking about it. They're not getting support from their friends.
Right.
um, and it doesn't feel good for them either. So I agree with you. It's a problem in our community. It's something that, we're talking about and educating women about the limitations of female fertility. I think it will eventually trickle down where men will learn more about their own fertility, but it's definitely true.
So someone else asked a question privately because she didn't want to type it. She said, "How come rabbis are sometimes against this egg freezing?" I don't know if that's true or not, but that was her question. If
I
that's the
would
case.
say, I don't know. My experience has been with Rabbanim from all sides, like from Hasidish Dayanim to Yeshivish to Manworth. I mean, across the board, my conversations, both private and public, have been very positive. I think most Rabbanim see this as an opportunity to grow Jewish families, and I think there's a lot there. People sometimes throw around like, oh, it feels like a lack of hishtadlus. I mean, when I speak to Rabbanim or Rebbitzins, like, we all kind of agree that it's the opposite.
I
It's
would think
this.
it. Yeah, I would think this is
Yeah,
improper.
exactly. Like,
Like,
we think,
how is
okay,
this not? Yeah.
I have the faith and I have the emunah that one day I'm going to find somebody and we're going to have a family, and I want to make sure that I have all the resources available for me to have a large family. So I don't know. There may very well be men, Rabbanim, who are uncomfortable with it. Like, I'm sure there are, as with anything, there's going to be lots of opinions. But my experience has been very positive.
I think I'm just thinking of this now. I don't know, but I think it might be similar to like when I tell people that, if some food is like a specific food is tempting you and no one else is going to eat it, just throw it out. And they're like, no, the Torah is against this, is Bat Hashcha. It's like, it might just be like people making a blanket statement randomly without actually asking. Because we know
Yeah,
that
I
for
mean, I
men,
think it is, it's new and it can be, like I said, it's vulnerable and it's unpleasant sometimes. Um, what's interesting from sort of a halachic standpoint and a hashkafic standpoint is that, unlike other religions, the Jewish religion is actually extraordinarily engaging with reproductive technologies, right? Like, we don't shy away. We don't say IVF is usher if you need it, right? Because the desire to grow Jewish families is so strong that we're willing to use this new technology. And it's rare that it's rare that like halacha is so willing to like engage with new technology. Usually it's the instinct is like, it's new. Let's be cautious with it. And so I think there's that reaction to egg freezing, but when you dig down deep, there is this support because it will hopefully ultimately help grow more families.
and I wonder, like, if people who think that, I wonder if they actually asked or they're just like either embarrassed to ask or are assuming that something is wrong with it. Because maybe they heard that, for a man, there are certain halachos with, wasting sperm, but for women, this is not necessarily, not, I mean, not just not necessarily, not at all. So whoever thinks that, just, I guess, ask because Dr. Maslow is saying that she's spoken to many different types of rabbanim publicly and privately, and so far everyone has been supportive. So in case you just think this, then definitely clarify and get a real answer, because it could be that you're misreading it or misunderstanding it. Someone else asked, is there anything else that will cause the reproductive system to shut down, like stress or a minor illness such as diabetes? Well, diabetes is not a minor illness, but
No.
is there anything else that will cause the reproductive system to shut down?
So, I mean, it's hard to get the reproductive system to really shut down, right? Like I said, it takes a lot, and certainly the things that I see that make women like completely lose their periods is often things like particularly lack of sleep and lack of exposure to sunlight, because those circadian rhythms are what help keep the cyclicity, the cycles of our cycle. So, the classic example is the college student who pulls lots of all-nighters and studies a lot and then loses their period during finals, right? So part of it is stress, part of it is lack of sleep and lack of being out in this like just a normal kind of circadian rhythm. But that will come back eventually. So that, and certainly minor illnesses, a flu, COVID, any kind of immune inflammatory response can cause kind of temporary disruptions of the cycle. That doesn't equal infertility, right? Like disrupt the cycle is one thing, and the ovaries and the reproductive potential are another, right? It's the communication that sometimes needs to be adjusted, or is responding to the outside world. But that doesn't mean that there is something wrong with the ovaries, or that you're losing your eggs, or that there's going to be, that
Like
there's
it's not forever, basically. It's fixable. So that leads me to the next question, which someone said, how do you try to get a person's period back on track once it has stopped? So I can answer that from my end nutritionally, and you can answer it from your end. For me, when someone comes and says they no longer get their period or they haven't gotten a long time because of extreme dieting, number one is they have to usually gain weight in a healthy way. Number two is healthy fats are really, really important. I find that when they incorporate healthy fats like nuts and avocado and olive oil, that helps tremendously. And just healthy eating, like their body just needs to feel like it's okay. Like it needs to come back from that wounded place and just start eating normally and functioning normally. And they usually do get their period back. Some get it within a few months. I had one girl that it took her a year and a half to get her period back, and she was 16 and her parents were so worried. And recently her father called me and said she just had her first baby and everything's okay. So all that, hard work was worth it. The biggest challenge with them is that they're so afraid to even gain a pound that like I have to literally convince them like not to go on the scale and just trust the process, because they're gonna gain a little bit, but it's worth it. It's a fair trade-off.
Yeah.
And then someone else said, and then I'll let you answer it if you have other ways, that there are organizations that will help you, like a Time. I know you work with a Time. I'm sure there are other organizations as well that are absolutely dedicated to this. Like they'll walk you through the process, like technically, strategically, halakhically. They know all the like little ins and outs. Like we're doing this just to like give you like an eye opener and like awareness, but they will walk you like step by step. I know people who have gone through the process with you, with Dr. Maslow, and with the Time, and they literally held their hand every minute of the way and every step of the way. In terms of getting their period back, do you have more to add to what I said? Like, is there anything else that you would do?
It just depends on what's causing the periods to go away. So if it's body weight, it's exactly what you described. I mean, you hit the nail on the head perfectly. In terms of kind of slow, healthy weight gain, particularly healthy fat is the best way to do it. If the periods are have gone away for other reasons, and there's tests and there are evaluations we can do from a medical standpoint to identify kind of what's going on. It's just a matter of trying to figure that out. Now, the truth is, and people don't always realize this. So remember, I was telling you about the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is what kind of is the control center here and kind of regulates the communication between the brain and the ovary. That communication can take a long time to mature. So even we get, typically, let's say, girls get their periods, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, something like that, right? It can take sometimes like 10 years for the reproductive system to fully mature. And so it's actually not that uncommon and really not that abnormal for adolescents to have long stretches of time where they don't get periods, right? Like 16, I mean, we all know 16, 17-year-olds who didn't get regular periods. One of my biggest pet peeves in life is when somebody tells that person they have PCOS, because you really cannot diagnose PCOS in a
Right.
16 or 17-year-old.
Right.
It's a huge pet peeve of mine.
Yes.
The reproductive system can sometimes take till 22, 23, 24, 25 even to really mature. So I actually tend to not unless it's really bad and there are other indications, I tend to not give women the diagnosis of PCOS until 25 or 26.
Right.
Sometimes we call it ovulatory dysfunction, right? Like there's just something dysfunctional that's not quite jiving. And if it's, if it's this kind of lack of maturity and over time, it will get better. But sometimes there are 22 and 23-year-olds who want to have a baby. And then sometimes we need medication to help boost things.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. That's a good, it's a good explanation. It's also one of my pet peeves. Not just that, anything. Like people are like, oh, I had a stomach ache. I have IBS. I'm growing a little more hair than usual. PCOS. Like it's very, I find that once you label someone and diagnose them,
Ashkenazi Jews are very hairy.
are very what? Hairy?
Ashkenazi Jews are very hairy. It doesn't necessarily mean we have
I would think
PCOS.
Sephardic.
Oh, maybe Sephardi Jews too. Jews in
It's okay. There's good laser hair removal these days. I think it could all be taken care of. So a little bit off topic, but something that everybody wants to know and that I hear from women all the time is the period monster. Okay, the period monster comes right once a month, hopefully, because now we're old enough to get our period pretty much regularly. So hopefully it comes once a month. And besides the bloat and the bad mood and all that and feeling gross, whatever, the main thing in terms of like what my clients struggle with is like those insane cravings, like they want chocolate or pretzels or together both. And I've done research on it and I've gone to health food stores to try to talk to them about their vitamins, and I've tried different things on myself because I also suffer from it without any luck. So do you have any suggestions to help us with our once a month period monster, as I call it?
It's funny. My daughters, my oldest daughters are 12, so they're like right in this parsha of like, and they have the talk at school and they have videos, and they're like, they always come to me like they know more about like this than most of the kids in the class, but they're like, why in all the videos are people eating ice cream? They're like, do you have to eat ice cream when you get your period?
That's funny.
You don't have to, but yes, they're very confused by it. They're like, do we get to eat ice cream when we have our periods out of the container? So it's clear, look, there's so much about our life as women that is affected by our hormones. Like to some degree, when I think about, like I've spent the majority of my adult life studying the fluctuations of hormones in women, right? It's these huge fluctuations that happen on a regular basis. And it's incredible to me, one of my areas of study is looking at all the different parts of the body that change, let's say with ovulation, or change with the onset of pregnancy. Within a day or two of pregnancy, if you can like see changes in heart rate, in blood pressure, in all sorts of aspects of our life that are really dictated by hormones in a way that males are not, right? Like we're talking about young women whose their whole lives are dictated around hormones all the time, like this constant fluctuation that like men don't have at all. And so it's a super common phenomenon, and it has to do with the drop in hormones that comes as a result of the period. The period comes when all the hormones are on their way down and then they go back up for the next cycle. So it's very natural and it's very common. I don't know that I have the cure for it.
Any suggestions?
Yeah.
We have to invent like 0-calorie chocolate. That would be amazing. But as of now, there's no such thing. It's like when people quit smoking, like they still have the fake cigarettes or whatever, but
I mean, chocolate has a lot of antioxidants.
Right. What are you saying? You're recommending we eat chocolate?
Sure.
Yeah, Ruchi wrote the same thing. She said, just eat the chocolate. So someone said, should college or seminary students be worried if throughout their year they aren't getting their periods, their regular periods, or any at all?
So it's super common. That's a very, very, very common age for women to start, to have disruptions in their menstrual cycle, and it's generally fine. I think it's a good idea if it's going on for a long period, for an extended period of time. If you've gone 3, 4 months without a period, it's probably a good idea to just check in with a doctor.